Okay, and welcome to week 3 in the advertising class. And today we're going to be talking about the next topic, which we kind of have to address. It's really the last topic we're going to address this semester, and that is, of course, advertising on the internet. And so here we are, advertising on the internet. And what we're going to talk about today is just the concept of it. We're going to talk about how we actually do it in a future lecture. But the concept of advertising on the internet is important to understand because the internet is very different than everything that came before it. So it has a special place, but at the same time, it's also got a lot of similarities with what came before it. Now, first of all, we have to admit that advertising is everywhere. It's kind of like, I don't know, remember who it was that said that the two inevitabilities are death and taxes? I would say death, taxes, and advertising. Basically, if there's going to be communication, there's going to be advertising. So, for example, advertising drives commerce. People have to buy stuff, people have to sell stuff. And so, in every society, even societies that are not quote-unquote capitalist, if you want to use that term, there is always going to be the need to advertise and to promote services. Print advertising, for example, pays for newspaper publication. If you didn't pay or if there weren't ads in the newspaper, your newspaper would cost like $20. Nobody would buy it because the production cost of making a physical newspaper, assuming that anybody still reads those, has to be paid for by somebody, and it really can't be the customer because it would be prohibitive. And so, therefore, if a local advertiser or a local business wants a full-page ad, they're going to pay a lot for it, and that's going to pay for the publication of the paper. And the same thing with television. Advertising pays for TV broadcasts. These big TV conglomerates in New York, the networks, all across the country, they get a lot of money from sponsors who get their commercials in front of your vision. And of course it's annoying. Nobody likes commercials, but that's what pays for the programming. Same thing with radio. Radio, not quite the same model, but a very similar one. So basically, every time you hear or see something that you want to hear or see, you always have to take a little bit of those advertising nuggets with you. Now, how is the internet different? Well, in many ways it is not. But at the same time, in many ways it is. So let's talk about why the internet is different. And basically, this is because the nature of the internet was different from the beginning. There was always a kind of a wild spirit to the internet. Let me explain what I mean by that. Now, first of all, let's talk about the technology itself. If you bought a television set, let's say a long time ago, let's say back when television was basically the king of the mountain, let's say the 80s or 90s, you buy a television set, you basically aren't paying for anything. You just turn it on and watch TV. And so therefore, if somebody throws a commercial at you, it's not like you feel you've been cheated. Let's be fair about that. The same thing with buying a magazine or a newspaper. You're paying a relatively small amount for information that you want. And in that particular case, you don't even necessarily know the ads are there. You're just flipping through them and generally ignoring them. Now, on the other hand, the internet is based on the whole idea of the computer. Now, the computer, people don't sit back and watch their computer. People actively are doing things. You're searching information. You're searching the internet for information that you want or for content that you want. And so, therefore, anything that interrupts you from doing that is just not acceptable. And so, there was always a trend at the beginning of this wonderful internet revolution we've had. The people just didn't want to be interrupted. They did not want to share it. They thought of it as a beautiful thing. They wanted it to be free. So people went to the internet to avoid commercialization. Basically, almost everybody, even quote-unquote capitalists or people who wanted to make money, they always felt that the internet was different. That was where they went to get away from all that. That's where they went to share things. And so the idea was that it was the closest we come to this communal pool of information. And there was an automatic hostility to people who would violate that, even through any kind of paid access for a long time. It's only been recently that we're getting used to the idea. Now, part of this came with things like eBay, online auctions, and then, of course, Amazon, where you're doing your shopping online, your banking online. And so eventually we just get used to the idea of this being a way that commerce can operate. We can operate commerce online. Now still, and this is still true, most people still accept pure content on the internet to be basically free. They don't want to pay for a clip art, for example. They don't want to pay for Google searches or Google images. They basically want that stuff to be available, and it generally is, but usually there's some premium version of all these things. That's what they're trying to sneak in that you would have to pay for. Okay, so let's talk about internet advertising itself. What constitutes a means of advertising on the internet? And so for this, we have to kind of go back to the basics of what the internet is. Now, I was going to start with email. Email is basically part of the internet, but it's not part of your browsing experience specifically. It's actually separate. Now, email ads are sometimes referred to as spam, and usually that's true, but not always. Spam is a no-no. Listservs and emails are also kind of like spam, but they're not quite the same thing. Pop-ups and tricks, things like that, those are another category. And web rings and what we call banner ads. That's another area. Now, of these four, which cover just about everything, really only one of them is a good idea. Okay, so let's talk about spam first. Basically, spam is illegal. And to understand why spam is illegal, you have to understand what spam is. And the problem is the definition is a little bit murky. Spam emails are unsolicited. You do not ask for them. They come in your mailbox. You wish they weren't there. You basically delete them, but they come in such large numbers, eventually it gets to the point where it becomes an annoyance. Spam emails do not give you the opportunity to opt out. Generally, if you get a spam email, you immediately want to say, don't ever send this to me again, and you want to find the place to do that. That may not exist. Or maybe you just don't bother, you don't care, you just want to get rid of it. But one way or another, if it doesn't have the ability to do that, then it's considered spam. Spam emails do not identify their source. If you get a spam email, maybe they'll identify where you are supposed to go for whatever services this is, but they don't tell you who sent it. That's illegal. You have to be able to reply to the email. And spam emails often include false or misleading information. So, for example, let's say they're pretending to be some kind of a financial site, and you go there and you see porno. Obviously, that is misleading. That is spam. That is illegal. They can't do that. Okay, what spam is not? Spam is not just unsolicited email, meaning that if you get an email from somebody you don't know, which is obviously a mass email, they're asking you to buy something or do something, that does not mean it's spam. You can do that. Technically, mailing lists are not illegal. If you get on some kind of a mailing list, which may be that somebody has bought and sold your email address, which is not nice, but it's not technically illegal either. Just because that happens doesn't mean it's spam. On the other hand, if you are the one spamming, if you are sending a mass email, your ISP, your internet service provider, may not allow you to do so on their server. Meaning that you can buy a spamming, or not spamming, but you can buy a mass email program, or you can maybe even get one for free, where you take some kind of a message and cast it out to the four winds. But your ISP may see that you're doing that, and they may come in and say, well, you're violating our services, and they may kick you out. Or they may fine you or cancel your account, one or the other. Unsolicited email stretches resources and bandwidths and can cause legal issues. For example, let's say you're sending out 100,000 emails. So sending out one email down the pipeline, the server doesn't notice it. There's loads of information going out. But if you are basically sending out 100,000 emails, you are basically taking the email program that the server has and are basically making it work overtime. And if you do that enough, they're going to notice it. So they may notice their bandwidth is being overemphasized, and they probably have detection systems that will say, it looks like somebody's spamming, and then you're in trouble. Every unsolicited email must come from an actual email address and have an opt-out clause, which will get you off the list. That is absolutely essential. So if you're going to send mass email, you must have those things. And of course, you cannot lie. You cannot pretend to be something that you're not, or offer a service that you don't have, or send somebody to some other service that they really wouldn't have wanted to go to. So, and again, mailing lists are voluntary. You can volunteer to be on an email list. You can have a mailing list of your own. You can create your own email list for your customers. And if you promise them that you're not going to give that email away to spammers, that's got to be your bond. You can't sell that name, or you shouldn't anyway. Pop-ups. Now, pop-ups suck. Never do that. Pop-ups are incredibly annoying. You just don't want to go there. So pop-ups are so annoying that the entire browser industry has gone out of their way to prevent them. Every browser that I know of has some sort of pop-up filter which will prevent pop-ups from working, and you'll have to basically allow it to work or deny permission. And once you do that, that basically means that if you're going to advertise through pop-ups, that's probably not the way to do it. And once again, the internet is active, not passive. So you are going to a website to look for something, and then if suddenly your browser does something that you don't want it to do, that's going to make you mad. Anything that takes control of your computer away from you is wrong. It violates the entire idea of using your computer. So you should not be happy if someone does that. So pop-ups tell your computer to utilize its resources to open a new program window without your permission. And so that alone puts it in the wrong category. Now, the only reason why this would not be wrong is if it somehow adds value to what you're already doing. So, for example, let's say you've got a website where you are showing off some sort of product, and a pop-up window comes up to allow you to complete a survey while still searching the internet. Maybe that's okay because it's part of what you're already doing, and it makes sense in context. Now, that doesn't mean the pop-up filter is going to allow it to go through, but at least you're not being tricked. Okay, now the banner ad, and as you might imagine, this is probably one of the only ones that's okay. So it's by far the best idea. The banner ads are invitations. If you see a banner ad somewhere on a page that you're looking at, that is basically an invitation to go to wherever that resource is. And you don't have to go. It doesn't necessarily stop you from doing anything else. It's just part of the picture, very much like, say, a magazine ad might be. And so you just go right by it if you're not interested, but if you happen to be interested, there it is. So like images or links, you can ignore them. Banner ads are managed by search engines and large websites. If you're doing a Google search and you type in something like baseball, for example, you might get ads related to baseball memorabilia or season tickets or something like that. That might make sense. The sponsors pay to place their banner ad, and they pay based on its placement and size. And so this can be very expensive, and the search engine tries to find ways to make these banner ads appear relevant to searches. And of course, if you've got a large website like Amazon, you've already got some mechanism in place to do basically the same thing. Or you can have a web ring established where you share a pool of banner ads that are put together by people that you associate with. There's all kinds of ways of doing it. But like all advertising, it is expensive, but it's worth it if it works, meaning that if you pay $3,000 a month to have your banner ad featured in Google, that may seem like a lot of money, but if it generates enormous sales, it might be worth it. So sometimes that's the thing. If you get past a certain threshold, the actual price of the advertising begins to make sense. Okay, so what I'm going to be asking you to think about doing is creating a banner ad. So basically, this is just an image. That's the beauty of it. Your banner ad is just an image that you see on the screen. It's an image with a very specific parameter. You have a certain size that you've got to work with, and there's more than one type, and that's basically what you got to know at this point. Banners can include animation and even interactivity. We're going to talk about how that works. And most of the functionality of the banner is handled through the coding, which means that you really don't have to worry about it for this assignment. Technically, it could be done just through some kind of an image. Now, the image or animation has to make your entire argument. That's the important thing. That's what you've got to work with. In the radio ad, you had 30 seconds of time to make your argument through sound. In your television ad, you had 30 seconds of sight and sound. In your print ad, you've got a page to deal with. Here, you've got a little bitty window. And so you got to make sure that whatever is on that window makes sense. And this is what we call clickbait. Your idea is to get your potential customer to want to click that image. You got to give them a reason to. So this is a lot more difficult than it seems. That's why you want to be thinking of it now. What can you show them in that little bitty window that will make them want to find out more? And so remember the first principle. It's got to attract their attention. It's got to promote the product. And it's got to make some sort of an argument. Make it relevant. Okay, once the customer clicks, they arrive in your showroom. That's the important thing. The customer wants to be there. It's their decision. That is what you call a win-win situation. That is why we are doing it. And so that is basically where we're at right now, the idea of advertising on the internet. And so what I want you to do is to be thinking about this. And this week, I want to see a mock version of your commercial, whatever you've got so far. But also be thinking in terms of what you might want to advertise on the internet. It could be the same product or it could be something else, and we'll talk about that more as time progresses.